So I get to do the encouragement this week, and I just wanted to actually explain, first of all, while I'm in my car. Um, I came out here so I wouldn't be distracted, and it's funny because that's actually what I'm talking about is distractions. So last summer, God put on my heart that we were all too distracted, and he was just reminding me with our phones and devices, with social media, with all the apps on our phone, with games, binging Netflix, all those kind of things. And it's kind of funny that a whole year later, the turn of events and how those seem so small compared to what began to distract us. In Luke 10:38, it says, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. And it's funny because I always kind of feel bad for Martha because, dinner did need to be prepared. And, but at the same time, there's times to prepare and there's times to just sit. And I feel like when, the COVID first hit, everybody was in a bit of a panic. People were distracted by that. We were distracted by the news. And then it became an issue of masks or no masks. And then it became an issue of listening to reports of police brutality and then the protests and riots. And it's not that any of those things are bad things. If those are things you're passionate about, if those were things you were feeling that you needed to talk about. But God just was reminding me that all of those things are taking our attention off of him, and we should always be putting him first. And so Jesus said to Martha, he said, Dear Martha, you were worried and upset over all these details, but there is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. And I always just think, we have to just continue to focus our minds on what's most important. Andy Stanley says the things we get distracted by are never as important as the things we get distracted from. And I know I talked a few years ago to the women at Women's Refresh about refocusing. And I was talking about when horses are in a race, the owners put blinders on them so that they will just stay focused, so they won't be spooked by anything to their side. They're just straight ahead looking at the race. And I know we don't want to think of God like putting a veil in front of our eyes or just putting anything to block our vision, but it's not about blocking our vision. It's about staying focused. And those blinders keep the horse focused on what's in front of them. So you just think of it as encouraging them to pay attention to the race rather than distractions. Even the crowds will distract them. So I am reading, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. And once again, I just thought of the great hymn, when we turn our eyes upon Jesus, the things of earth grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. And I pray that this just encourages you, that no matter what we're seeing on the outside, what's distracting us here on earth, that we can just look heavenward and just continue to think about things that are more important than anything distracting us from Jesus. Have a blessed week.